Jason Ackerman, CEO, Terrascend, on the Dales Report. All right, I am joined with the CEO of Terrascend, Mr. Jason Ackerman. How are you, sir?
I'm great. How are you?
Good. Where are you based out of? New York?
New York City, correct. Although now I'm in Woodstock, New York, temporarily.
How's life been over the last few months? Things getting back to a little bit of normality a little bit?
Not really. Nope.
Yeah.
Everyone's kind of still pretty quiet, although I've been down to the city and it's actually feeling a little more normal.
Is it?
Yeah.
You're seeing more traffic on Wall Street and that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Went back to the neighborhood and it's pretty packed with people. Shops are open. So
Well, that's exciting.
Up
So let's talk about last week. Big week for the company. You released your preliminary results for the second quarter of 2020. Some of the key takeaways were net sales increased by 36% sequentially, 169% year over year to $47.2 million. Adjusted EBITDA of $11.4 million, which was an increase of 131%. So all in all, it appeared it was a very good week for you and a good time to have you on the Dales Report. So how did you feel about everything that was announced last week?
Yeah, it was a great quarter. We've had some enormous momentum in the business. If you kind of look at where we were fourth quarter at 25 million up to 47 2 quarters later, we were negative EBITDA at the end of last year, rolling solidly at 25% EBITDA margin. So we're climbing up. And when you look at the stats, we're in the top 5 financial performance in terms of, stats and profitability in the sector. So we feel really good.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with, obviously the industry continues to mature, but it's been well noted since this pandemic took place that a lot of people are consuming a lot of cannabis. How much do you read into that?
Well, I think that is true, just like alcohol, but that hasn't really had any impact, on our financials. We've been making some very strong investments that are really paying off now in terms of expansion, further wholesaling. So this is really, a function of the growth that we put in place over the last year.
Good. Let's talk about day-to-day operations. Earlier this month, you announced the appointment of Jason Marks as your chief legal officer. So share with us the significance of that announcement. And more importantly, how important in any business you have to have the right legal minds in place, but how much more important is it in an industry that's changing so much rapidly all the time?
Yeah, it's actually really important. Since I've been involved with the business in the last 7-8 months, I put a pretty significant change in place around the senior leadership team, bringing in people from multi-billion-dollar industries with very large experience. This industry, it's a complex industry. Every state is unique. The regulatory environment is a necessary navigation as part of that. So having really strong financial controls, really strong on the legal side is a necessity as part of my senior leadership partnership. So yeah, and particularly coming out of pharma and coming out of regulatory industry and a lot of M&A experience, that was important part of what I was looking for.
Right. Another announcement I saw last week, you just received approval to commence cultivation in the state of New Jersey. You have a massive footprint when it comes to square footage in the state. Polling showing voters want a referendum on the ballot come November. So my question, given the current situation we're in with COVID battering state economies, do you feel legalization is now more inevitable than ever?
Well, certainly, look, the presidential election could have a big influence, Republican, Democrat, on the federal side.
Yeah.
But I actually think the federal's still a bit away. But I do think at the state level, there's going to be absolutely more pressure, particularly if you look at the Northeast. If New Jersey turns, which I believe it will with the referendum, there's 65% popular support. And then if New Jersey tips, a lot of pressure on New York. Mass is already there. So I do think that this is a big move for the Northeast, which is some of the largest populated areas in the country. And I'm really hoping for the Safe Banking Act as one of the most significant things that comes to pull regulation.
Yeah, I was going to say, say that passes. What does that look like for you in the state of New Jersey on day one?
Well, so rec, then you don't really have to push the medical cards. Rec is a pretty substantial market in New Jersey, so I think that'll massively accelerate the market. So we're very, very encouraged, which is why we're building out 140,000 suite of our 240,000, because we're fairly optimistic that it's going to be a fairly strong accelerant in the marketplace, and we believe pretty hard in going big, fast, early.
Right.
And so, it's an important part of our strategy.
Last Thursday, you had your investor and analyst day. Looking back on that day, what was the main takeaway about the industry? Like, what was the topic of conversation? And more importantly, what was the main takeaway about your company specifically?
I think what's interesting is the analysts are now marking us in, part of the top tier in the cannabis space, and they kind of mark our top tier and second tier. So clearly, we're right in the middle right now of top tier, which is critical. And then you look at our financial performance, the recognition of having EBITDA margins that is now top in class is pretty substantial. So I think there's a different light people see us.
So one of the features in your investor day was a fireside chat with the chairman and largest shareholder of Terrascend, which was Jason Wild from JW Asset Management. He's been very bullish on this company in the past and continues to be. So what does it mean to have someone like Jason, a strategic investor like him? What does that say to your investor base?
Well, we have, two significant shareholders that are actually quite important to our base. JW, who runs one of the largest cannabis funds, and he's got over $100 million of the fund invested. It's a pretty substantial backing, and I think it says a lot about the confidence and getting behind this business. He also has an enormous flow of transactions, so that's a real big additive to our M&A potential activity. And then, as you probably know, we have Canopy Growth, that's the largest Canadian player with a pretty substantial balance sheet, and they've been very gracious in opening up the kimono to us inside their team in terms of expertise and otherwise. So great shareholder base.
Yeah, that was another big component in last week's Investor Day was that you had CEO David Klein part of your fireside chat. So share with us, what does Canopy see in Terrascend that maybe the average investor may be missing?
Well, I think if you follow what Canopy's been focused on is they've been pretty clear that when federal legalization occurs, that they plan on making a very substantial play in the United States. So they've been looking at making investments. So when federal legalization occurs, they've got a leg up. So they see us as, one of, a few potential horses that has real legs to grow. They're very positive and very supportive of us. And, that's kind of their goal at the moment.
So let's face it, you guys have been a pioneer for this industry. And it's crazy to think that this topic of conversation in Wall Street began 5 or 6 years ago, but changes so much on a day-to-day basis, a month-to-month basis, and a year-to-year basis as well. So looking back as you're like one of the true pioneers of this industry and got going right from the beginning, what stands out to you the most if you were to look back at all this time about the industry itself?
It's not too different from when I started my own company, Fresh Direct for online grocery, which was, no one knew what it was or how to make sense of it. It was really kind of that local, pot store that was illegal and people are trying to figure out. And then it was the gold rush. So you have this massive kind of up and down, very similar to Internet 0.10. So a lot of people, what I find most interesting is you've got people who came into the business, think that they can make a quick dollar. But the reality is it's like any business, it takes a lot of hard work and not every company is going to make it. So, with the capital rush, then the capital pull, a lot of people are going to go under, littered with people who weren't really professional business managers. I think it's chaos in many ways and really a lack of understanding of the industry and lack of understanding that just because Pennsylvania is a great state, it doesn't mean that Michigan's going to be.
Right.
And the complexity is a lot more than you see. So again, I really liken this like Internet 2.0. There's going to be a lot of money made and there's going to be a lot of failures along the way, but there's a lot of good stuff underneath this, really is.
How exciting are you to see what will transpire, obviously leading up to the election and what happens in Congress? These are some monumental moments, I would think, for the U.S. cannabis landscape as we gear up into the fall season. Do you not think?
It's, when you're running a business, you can't bet on political events to be driving the success and failure of the business. So you really try not to make too much out of that. We really focus on state politics rather than national politics.
Yeah.
Because other than that, we gotta make our money as it is today. So, we're hopeful, but we can't make any bets in our business that any of the changes federally are going to occur. And that's how we run our business today. So I try to kind of keep out of the guessing game on that side and make sure that we can make hay of what we have, without any changes.
All based on fundamentals, right?
Yep.
Well, congrats on the week last week. Best of luck moving forward. And let's keep in touch, okay?
All right, great. It's great to see you.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks.